I will be giving my updated 2028 election prediction. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We'll be bringing up JJ Maps. Hopefully. Yes. Okay. And let's look. Before we really get started, let's look at Trump's recent approval rating numbers. If we go into his approval rating, most polls, actually every poll still has him underwater. Um, Most recent poll has him at -8. The average is -12%. But of course, that is skewed a little bit. Um, because there's some polls that have him at like -32%, and some polls that have him at -5%. I personally believe his approval rating is probably around -10% if I had to make a guess. Gavin Newsom still leads all polling for the Democratic primary. Same with JD Vance. And the reason I have him picking Mark Kelly as his VP candidate is because Mark Kelly has been a popular senator that has been getting attacked by the Trump administration a ton recently. So, in this scenario, I do see Gavin Newsom taking Mark Kelly because Mark Kelly has recently been the face of, like, being the victim of an abuse of power, you could say. And then JD Vance, Marco Rubio just makes sense. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and start with my safe states, which will be California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, Colorado. I do believe New Mexico will go into that safe column. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, most of these New England states. New Jersey, after a recent governor's election, there's no reason not to believe New Jersey will be safe. Same with Virginia, too. Um, any other states, Illinois will be safe, and that's all of my safe states for the Republican Party, Democratic Party. Now for JD Vance and Rubio, most of the Great Plains, Kansas may fall. I could see Kansas or Nebraska falling into that 9% margin, but probably not. Maybe Iowa. I could see Iowa falling back into, because Republicans don't do the best on a local level. In 2020, Trump won it by 8 points. 2016, Trump won it by 9 points. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say Iowa will probably go. Will probably be more of a 8% margin to the Republicans, not safe. And then Indiana and Ohio will probably fall back into a, yeah, probably back into an 8 point margin, and then Trump won it by, yeah. So I don't think Ohio will be safe either. We'll now move on to our likelies, which I do believe will be Florida. Marco Rubio, former senator from there, will definitely rally up some support in Florida. Oh, same for Vance in Ohio. Former senator from there can rally up some support. I think Vance will do good in a place like Ohio. This district in Nebraska will go to Newsom and Kelly by probably around 4 or 5 points. I do believe Minnesota will go to Gavin Newsom and Kelly by around the same 7 point margin. Biden won it in 2020, but even in 2024, we saw Minnesota go 15 points to Democrat. So, and with recent events, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota shifts to a 10 point safe margin for Newsom and Mark Kelly, but I don't think Newsom has the same appeal as someone like Biden. I do think Newsom is one of the. I think he's good at appealing to the average voter, but he's really bad at appealing to your more heavily researched voters. He's not the best at staying still on his positions. Sorry, I forgot to have New York safe. Forgot about that. Sorry, New York should have been safe from the beginning. Uh, so I honestly think Newsom's ceiling in Minnesota would be around 8 points. I do believe New Hampshire goes into a 7 point margin, and then this district in Maine goes into a 7 point margin. Iowa, probably a 6 to 8 point margin. And then Texas, I do believe, could possibly fall back into that 6 point margin as we saw before, um, as we saw in 2020. But Trump won it by 14 points in this past election. So I honestly do think it's still likely Vance wins it by 7 to 8 points. Now we'll get on to the swing states. Um, I'm going to go ahead and say North Carolina does stay with the Republicans. Even with how good Roy Cooper's doing in North Carolina, unless Roy Cooper's on the ticket, which he won't because he'll just be too old. I don't know if North Carolina can flip, even though North Carolina on a state level is very Democratic, but Republicans do hold the majority of registered voters in North Carolina too. So now John Ossoff's doing very good in Georgia. Georgia went to Biden in 2020. Trump won it by 2 points in 24, but Georgia has two Democratic senators elected, and recently John Ossoff will likely be reelected in 26. And right now, I do believe Georgia's next governor will be a Democratic governor. So I do think Georgia is shifting to the left. So I could definitely see Georgia going towards the Dems, but I do think Georgia will probably be one of the closer races. Arizona, it did go to 5 points in 24, but Biden was still able to win it. And Trump is doing very bad with the Latino Hispanic vote recently, especially with a lot of ICE events that, with ICE. And Trump is just doing really bad at appealing to the Hispanic population in America. And with Mark Kelly on the ticket, I could definitely see Gavin Newsom and Mark Kelly taking Arizona in the scenario. And if they take Arizona, I do expect Nevada to go with Arizona too. Wisconsin was the closest state to shifting to uh, Kamala Harris in 24, but in 2020 it was also pretty close to going to Trump too. So I do think Wisconsin really just comes to how high the turnout is in Milwaukee, and um, so Wisconsin definitely will be a close race. But with Trump's approval rating right now, I have no reason not to believe. And they have a dim um, governor most recently. When was their last? I believe it was in 22. Yes. And if we can even go to the Senate races, they elected a Democratic senator in 24. Although they do have a Republican senator, but that was in a Republican year in 22. I don't think 28 will be a Republican year, so I will be saying Wisconsin does go to Gavin Newsom and Mark Kelly. Then we also have Michigan and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, the numbers for registered Republicans have been looking a little bit better, but I do think that is more of a um, independents deciding their party more. In Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania does have Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is doing good in polling for his reelection in 26 as governor. I still think Democrats are ahead in Pennsylvania. Would not be surprised if J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio take it. We also have Governor Gretchen Whitmer, popular governor in Michigan. She's a Dem. Um, when was their last governor election? In 22, where Whitmer won by 10 points. And we can even go to 24, where they also re elected a Democratic senator. And then in 2020, they elected a Democratic senator. So I do believe that Michigan will also be going blue. Maybe by a higher margin than the rest of these states. I do think Michigan will probably be one of the bluest blue states, or one of the bluest swing states, probably going Gavin Newsom, Mark Kelly by around that 2% margin. I could see Pennsylvania going either way, but just because all of these states have voted in unison since I believe, what was it, 84? Is the last time Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania didn't vote for the same party. 88. It's been since 88. So, and with how on a state level Republicans aren't doing the best in Pennsylvania, I definitely do see Gavin Newsom, Mark Kelly taking it, but Gavin Newsom is a weaker candidate. So I do see J.D. Vance also taking it. I do think Pennsylvania is probably a toss up. So you know what? I'm just going to leave it as a toss up. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and peace out.